All right, let's go ahead and get started today. I am the ghost professor, Professor Perfetti. Sorry about my medical challenges this semester. I can't say I'm not going to have a few more, unfortunately. It was unexpected. So we may continue to have a couple of webinars here and there, online classes. Hopefully it won't be too disruptive. But the advantage to you is that a lot of the beginning of the semester is Bloomberg certification. So it should have given you extra time in the lab and to work on your Bloomberg certification, which takes about 8 hours anyway. So please take advantage of that as we go through the early part of the semester. So as we get started today, I'm also letting you know I'm recording this class to post on YouTube because in addition to having videos of classes when I'm not here, we'll have videos of classes even when I am here. I'll still record one of the 4 sections. There are sections on Monday and Wednesday between at 11, 12:30, 3:30, and 11, 12:30, 2, and 3:30. So I run 4 straight sections. And so one of those 4 sections will be recorded and posted each week. It is very important that you have to attend the section that you're registered for purposes of exams and group projects. But if you do need to go to a different section for some reason from time to time for a lecture, they all will generally have the same material. And again, the content should be at least recorded from one of the sections if you can't physically make it to class. Kind of your responsibility to keep up with the content, right? But that being said, today we're going to talk primarily about homework 2, which is due on Monday, and did a webinar on this past Monday about it. And the other thing I need to get you to do is to start forming teams because your group projects are starting. So in the People tab of ELMS, under Group Project Teams, is the list of teams. And this is the 2 p.m. section, which is section 301. So what I need you to do is if you haven't put yourself on a team, you have to be in one of these teams that says 201 on it. You can start dragging yourself over there quickly because I need to put everybody on a team, okay? So if you don't know anybody, then you can either have 2 choices. You can look at a team that is empty and say, I just want to be by myself, but very quickly you're not going to be by myself because somebody's going to come and join you. Or you can find somebody who you might want to meet and then just kind of put your name in that section. You'll be in that team. Teams have to be minimum of 5 people, no more than 7, and you have to be registered for the section that is your team. So since this is section 301, you have to be on one of the section 301 teams if you're in this room right now. So again, I'll let you self-select your teams. And very quickly start figuring out, in just a minute, who your teammates are, because you're going to eventually have to work with them on a project which starts on Monday. Okay? So while you're setting up your teams, putting your team list, I want to also mention, just kind of overview the class again, that this class is again about equity analysis, and there's 4 parts of equity analysis that I'm going to teach you. So at the end of the semester, you're going to be, and this is one of your team projects, you're going to do a project on a company, say it's Delta Airlines, and then you're going to do a target price for Delta Airlines, pick whatever the price is, make a number up, $110, and then you're going to do a bull and a bear scenario, which is to say, I think it can be as high as 130 and as low as 80, and you're going to explain why, and then you're going to do 4 types of analysis, okay? The first part of the analysis is what we're going to start covering this week, which is called EIC. E stands for economy, I industry, C company. It basically says that the external environment explains about half the performance of a company. So we really need to understand that external environment, right? And a good example right now is if you're reading the news and let's say our company that we're going to analyze is Delta Airlines. Like what in the news in the external environment might be very relative or relevant. What's going on? Yeah. The coronavirus, and particularly China. So you got horrible situation in China, which is now spreading globally, which not only disrupted their new year, but is disrupting global travel and to some degree the global economy. Like, I don't know if you've seen, like, nobody's going to Hong Kong, nobody's going to Macau, right? Nobody can go to China. All the US airlines have shut service to China, right? We're seeing global supply chains that are disrupted. Foxconn has stopped producing iPhones. There's going to be an iPhone shortage coming up, right? So, like, people don't understand how this is actually going to seriously affect things. So that's the point. Who's going to be impacted by this? How will the companies, the industry are looked at? How much of an impact? And what type of impact should we expect? That's part of the question that we need to start to understand. That's part of what we're going to do in our EIC for the company and the industry. Okay? Second analysis, which we're going to get to in 2 weeks, will be the historical analysis of the economic framework, the economic analysis. By the way, that's the part of the class that you're going to hate, and it's going to be the hardest for you. Okay? Because what you're going to have to do is take the useless accounting statements that you've been trained on for 3 years and unlearn all that wasteful stuff to get back to practical cash flows, right? Because in the world of finance, they deal with paper, right? Accounting deal with paper, we deal with cash. So we have to take their paper statements and turn them back into cash flows. And you're not used to that. You're used to dealing with the paper stuff that they've taught you how to look at. And that is not about how value is created. Okay, it's about how they keep score, right? And so we have to take those statements and put them into an economic format to be able to do valuation, okay? And so McKinsey has come up with an approach that does that to Midi-Glady Miller that's going to be foreign to you. You're going to learn how to do it. You're going to hate it, right? Nonetheless, got to do it. The advantage of it is that once you get to the other side, you're going to see 2 benefits. Benefit number 1, it makes the analytics very clean. You're going to wonder why we bothered to go to accounting statements in the first place. And number 2, it also makes valuation much more straightforward because it puts it into a format that is enterprise DCF friendly for free cash flow. So essentially, that's what we're going to start doing in a couple weeks. And then from that historical analysis, we are going to then teach you how to analyze 2 parts of the history of the company. You're going to do an ROIC tree analysis to understand drivers of ROIC, why they are changing and how they impact ROIC. And you're going to do what's called a CFI analysis, which is a cash flow analysis, to understand what's really happening with the cash flows of the company. But here's what's going to be important. As we move to section 3, which will mostly be after spring break, we're going to get into valuation. And that is where we start dealing with the future. Matter of fact, the biggest difference between the discipline of accounting and the difference of finance is accountants look backwards. Finance people look forward. As I like to say, you can't drive a car, look in the rearview mirror. But when you do financial statement analysis, that's what you're doing. You're looking backwards. You're wasting your time because you're just keeping score. In fact, it's kind of funny. I have 2 Maryland basketball students that have turned in their schedules in terms of when they're not going to be here for potential excuses on assignments. And I was kind of joking with them, and they were basically saying, you know, this is when we're going to have games. And I haven't been keeping up as much with Maryland basketball as I could, but we have 2 of the guards that are in this class. One's a point guard, the other guy says a shooting guard, so I hope they're doing well. But here's the thing. They can probably tell me how much they're scored, how many points per game. They can probably tell me how many minutes they play. They can tell me what they're ranked. They can tell me their record. They can tell me how they're doing in the conference title. They can tell me what the score of the game was last night. They can tell me what the score of their competitors were. But I asked them both, are they going to make the tournament in April? Or March Madness? Are they going to make the tournament in March? And they both laughed. They said, we hope so. Right? But that's the point. That's accounting versus finance. Accounting is just scorekeeping. I can tell you the score. I can tell you how many points I scored per game. I can tell you how much minutes I played. I can tell you my record. But none of that guarantees that I'm going to win the next game. That's what we're doing in finance, because valuation is about future cash flows. And the past doesn't always predict the future. There is nobody in this room that can tell me with current Tesla financial statements how you explain that Tesla's worth almost as much as Toyota and over worth $100 billion, never having made any profit in the history of Tesla on an annualized basis. So how does that happen? It can't. It's physically impossible, yet that's what's happening in the marketplace. So what I'm telling you is the past doesn't repeat always, and that's where finance breaks down. Because when people assume that the past repeats itself, That's where sins are committed. So one of the things we're going to learn when we do valuation is we've got to forecast the future. And that's where the tool in front of you becomes very important. You're looking at one tool that is very valuable because it gives you a view into Wall Street's view of the future. And you have to pay a lot of money for that view, but that's a critical view. And that's something that a lot of people have no idea of. And that's going to be something we're going to have to rely on. We do our valuation because we're going to talk about the value of the companies. So what practically means to you is we're going to build a spreadsheet to value that future, forecast that future. And so again, if you don't know Excel in this class, by the end of the semester, you will. And we're going to spend about 2 weeks building a very detailed Excel model. I'm going to build it with you. You're going to build it. Follow me. You're going to turn it in. You're going to do it yourself. It's the only way you're going to know how to do it. And we're going to do a real-world company. We're going to do a real-world valuation. At the end of that 2 weeks, you're going to do another company, which will take you 10 minutes. Because the model's based on Bloomberg, and it's a reusable model. In fact, you'll probably be good enough that you'll be able to do it in about 2 minutes by the time you get near the end of the semester, right? But here's the thing. What you're also going to quickly realize is that plugging and chugging isn't good enough to be a good valuation person, right? As good as our model is. Because when I work with real-world CFOs, I'll sit there and we'll do these business case competitions where their companies will pitch business cases and they'll give them a hurdle rate. And they'll say, all right, you got to make a 20% internal rate of return and you can't have money. So as a smart employee, CFO said I need to make a 20% on my project or I can't have money. You think I'm going to go forward telling them I'm going to make less than 20%? No. I'm going to show a spreadsheet that says more than 20% because I'm not an idiot. Because I know if I say 15, they're going to say no. So the point is, what I quickly realized is the spreadsheet's a fairy tale. Because I'm going to say the same thing about Delta Airlines. If I tell you the share price is 110, you can mathematically solve a DCF that says 110. That doesn't make it so. So the other part of valuation, which again, you're going to have to learn, is beyond plugging and chugging in this class. It's the art of the valuation. What matters is the assumptions. The numbers don't matter if the assumptions don't add up. So I'm going to teach you how to do critical thinking. And that's the hardest part of valuation. Because anybody can come up with a spreadsheet. But are you putting good numbers in your spreadsheet? Are you making good assumptions? Are you thinking about the scenarios? And that, by the way, is where EIC will help you. Because some of the things that we're talking about now are going to come up when we make the assumption for Delta's forecast. How does this coronavirus impact revenue next year? How does it impact their competitive position next year? How does this impact the marketplace long term? Are people going to travel? Blah, blah, blah. We have to start thinking about these impacts because those become our forecast in the future. Final part of the class will be multiples. Multiples are just rearranged math, and it's an alternative triangulation to our valuation that we will do. You'll put all 4 parts of this together. Final week of class, you'll make a presentation. It's 20% of your semester grade. Okay? That's one of the group projects that your group is going to work on. Now, throughout the semester, we're going to build up to it. Last 5 weeks of class, you'll be working on this. But basically, that's one of your big group projects. The other group project that starts on Monday is the Bloomberg Trading Challenge. Okay? We are the #1 user of Bloomberg in higher education in the world. There is no other university in the world that has a lab like this. It just doesn't exist. All right, we have 60 terminals. Put into perspective, Wharton, where I went to school, has 8 terminals. The students have access to 2. Okay, you got 32 in this lab. Right? This is a privilege. Matter of fact, our lab was such in decrepit state last year that Bloomberg was the keynote speaker, guy running for president, by the way, basically came in, saw the lab, said, you guys should spruce up the lab. So he gave us 2 years worth of these terminals for free and a bunch of money to spruce up the lab. Still waiting for the school to actually spend the money for the lab. We got a gift. That's not his problem. That's just the incompetence of the state. But nonetheless, they gave us a bunch of money to even spruce up this lab. So it's a privilege to be in this lab. And these, by the way, reason why he's a billionaire is that each one of these terminals costs $25,000 per year per user for the base model, right? We're getting these for free as a school. And by the way, he has 310,000 users globally. And so that's why he's a billionaire and he can spend $2 billion in the next election. But that being said, it's the best tool in the world for finance. And so this is the pro tool. You go work on Wall Street, it's the actual software that you will actually use. Matter of fact, you get a job, they put you through Bloomberg certification. You're already certified. So you get a leg up in a lot of other undergrads. That's why you're getting certified in this class. But that being said, Here's the key, you're going to use it very heavily throughout the semester. One of the things they do is they have something called the Bloomberg Trading Challenge, which means you can go in with a hypothetical portfolio and using real trading tools, trade against other students anywhere in the world as a competition. Well, because we're the #1 user, they've given us the ability to do our own private trading challenge. So we're going to have a private trading challenge for this class. And they gave me administrative rights to do it. Nobody else can do this at any other schools. It's a privilege for us. So here's the point. Starting as soon as today, but by Monday, each of your teams is going to start with 1 million hypothetical dollars. And then for the next 6 weeks, you're going to trade. At the end of the 6 weeks, we're going to keep score. And whoever generates the highest portfolio value gets an A, and whoever has the lowest portfolio gets a value F, pure relative performance. Whether you win by $1 or 100,000 doesn't matter. So this is the part of the class that you're going to love, hate the most. It's fun, it's great, but I know you're all grade phobic because everybody wants the A out there, and suddenly you're going to get an F on one of your assignments. You're going to freak out. Well, welcome to the real world. Okay, drop ads Friday. But regardless, this is the Bloomberg Trading Challenge, and it starts. So one of the things I'll need from your team is every one of these team members needs to have a team captain, a portfolio manager, whatever you want to call that person. But that person needs to be responsible because I'm going to register that person's Bloomberg account to trade on behalf of your team. They're the only person that will be able to access the Bloomberg Trading Challenge on behalf of your team, and the only person that will be able to trade on behalf of your team. Okay? And so they need to be responsible. So if they go rogue and do crazy stuff, I can't stop them. If they decide they're too lazy to log into the terminal and sell the stock that's falling like a rock, well, sorry, your team just lost the competition, wiped out your semester grade. So pick somebody that you trust to be responsible because they're the ones that have to manage the account and they have the grade of the other team members in their hands. Not that there's a lot of pressure, but regardless, you can only trade through the terminal for the challenge. Yes?
Wait, you get like a grade every week?
Nope.
Or is it just one final grade after?
So what's going to happen is, you can see it right here on the assignments, is starting, well, as soon as today, but by Monday, you have to be registered. And as soon as you're registered, you'll start with $1 million. And then you're going to start trading. And then, where's assignments? Just want to make sure I get the right date. And then we're going to not really keep score until March 25th. So on March 25th, we're going to score. And whoever's in first place gets the best grade. Whoever's in last place gets the worst grade. On March 25th, we're then going to reset everybody back to $1 million. And the second half of the semester, you're going to start again. Now that's new, and you can thank your TAs for that, because that's not the real world. And that one, I kind of was thinking, but the TAs were like, please, because last semester, because I usually make you just, if you suck, you have to keep sucking. Like you can't short Tesla. Tesla goes to the moon, lose billions of dollars, and do a do-over with your investors. Like you lost a couple $1 billion, that's your portfolio position. You keep trading. You don't get to reset. So I'm going to let you reset. Because last semester, a few teams bought Boeing, and the first week of class, blowing, there was the tell. Boeing had the horrible tragedies, and all the stuff started coming out, destroyed their portfolios, and basically they were doomed from the first week of class, and they couldn't recover, and they were starting doing crazy stuff to catch up, right? I'm not saying that's not real world as well, but that really wasn't the learning experience that I wanted. So this semester, just in case you have some kind of explosion in your portfolio, you're not doomed for both half of the semesters. You'll get a do-over. Yes?
So throughout the process, can you see other teams' performance?
You'll see their performance, but you won't see their actual portfolio. Okay, that's a good question. So here's what's going to happen. To access the Bloomberg Trading Challenge, there's 2 ways to do it. And by the way, every time you make a trade, it sends me an email, which gets really annoying for me. But 2 ways to do this. You can either type in IDEA, which is their word for trade in Bloomberg, or T-message, TMSG, either one of those trade ideas, how that became team message, I don't know. That gets you to the trading challenge screen. Now, if you try to do this now, you can't get here, okay? Because what will have to happen is I have to add one person, your Bloomberg registered name, so you have access. I'll do it by team. So just to give you an example of this, last semester, this would be section 101 from last semester. These were the teams, 6 teams. And what I'll do is we'll score on portfolio value. So back in September 2019, they all started with $1 million. And so if they ran through today, this team, its portfolio is 1.125 million, cumulative 12.5%, they were in first place. In fact, the entire class averaged 9.62. Okay? So here's how the grading would work if I were to score them today. So it would be 5, 4, 4, 3, I don't count, 2, 1. Okay? And that would be the scores. All right, because remember in this class, you're actually going to 100 total points. I was overly dramatic. Like, I know 1 is not technically enough the way I grade, but generally if you get a 1 on a 5-point scale, you're not going to be happy. But that's the way the assignment will work. But nonetheless, 1 through 5 each half of the semester added up. So 2 to 10 points if you did worst and best both times. And that is of 100 total points for the semester. And before you completely freak out, there's usually about 5 extra credit points. So if you completely screw the pooch on the challenge, you do have the opportunity to do some extra credit, right? But nobody wants to actually be last. So there's a little competition that goes on. But regardless, this is the way that you'll be graded. And then we'll talk about some of the rules. But there's what's called longs and there's called shorts. Longs are literally owning the stock. Shorts means you short the stock. Doesn't matter how many shorts you do, but both half of the semesters you have to do a minimum of 10 longs. Otherwise, you're disqualified because you can't sit in cash, right? Because a few semesters ago, the market was doing horribly. So one of the teams thought that their best opportunity was to not trade. And they actually did well by not playing the game. Well, that kind of defeats the academic purpose. So I don't care how bad the market is, you're going to trade. You can be losing money left and right, you're going to keep on trading, okay? All right, so basically minimum 10 trades, longs, as many shorts as you want, but you got to do longs. You can see, the C4R team did the minimum trades both half of the semesters. The Howell team did 43 trades. I think in one section I had a team that did over 100 trades. So it depends on how much you want to actually trade. Yes?
So if we have 10 trades and we exit one of them, we're
You're still okay. You still have to have done 10.
Okay.
10 cumulative trades over the semester. So, but here's the other thing. The other rule is you can't have more than $300,000 in cash at any point in time starting next Friday. So you can't stay in cash. So if you have more than $300,000 in cash, I will disqualify you. So you got to keep at least 70% of that million occupied in something, okay? So you can't just sit on cash. And this is all equities. Now this is a Bloomberg tool, which means you can literally trade anything, but I've disabled it and limited it to just equities, okay? So just an example, how would I trade? So to trade, once you are the captain, I'm gonna set up, so I'll give you this, network. I'm going to clone the network, so I'll create the class. This is spring 2020, 301. I'm going to take these people out, leave me in. Create it. All right, so at some point, I'll need to know who your person is, your Bloomberg account name that you registered, so Jane Doe or whatever, and then I'll add you so you have access to the screen. The person that has access, when you get here, you have to select from the drop-down every time your class. Now, I have access to multiple classes as an administrator, but you won't. You'll only see the class you're registered, but you still got to select it. Then, if you want to trade, compose. And then you can choose to go long or short. That's your two options. Long means buy the stock, short means short it and then buy it back later. basically sell the stock. Okay. Now, you'll put in your ticker symbol. Who do you want to buy or sell? All right. Now, the last ticker you were on will happily default. So let's say I want to buy Lockheed Martin. So I type in LMT. It'll give me a current share price, $433. All right. And then what I'm going to do is I'll say, down here you won't have multiple networks. So this is section 301. And then over here, it says cost basis. The system allows you to do what's called a limit order. I've disabled that. So all of your trading is at the market. So that means that if you buy the trade, it goes through at whatever the price it is today. If you sell it, it sells at that price. Also, let's say you bought Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg does something stupid and the stock price falls. Until you go in and sell it, you're losing money. Okay? So basically, you have to go in as the person with your team and actually buy or sell. It doesn't auto do anything. I've disabled all of that functionality. The only trading is done by you. Okay? You put in the dollar amount. Now I have $1 million to start. Put in the dollar amount, it figures out the shares. So if I want to buy 20% of my portfolio, 200K, 200,000, hit send, and that will submit the order. If I trip up any of the rules, it will let me know. One of the rules is I didn't do my write-up. So one of the things I used to do is I used to make everybody write up every trade as part of an end of the semester paper to explain the academic rationale. And then I realized by the end of the semester, you were doing it at the last minute, you didn't even remember, and it was just a waste of everybody's time. So now you have to basically write the trade up when you do the trade. So your real cost of trading, fictitious money, is writing it up. But it's a tweet write-up, 50 characters. Not overly burdensome, but you got to do it on every buy and sell. So explain why you're buying Lockheed Martin. So I'm buying Lockheed Martin is a safety stock in an uncertain economic environment. Try and get better spelling than me. Send. Done. Now, it's going to try and execute it looking through bid and asks, take up to 10 minutes, so it may not execute immediately. And basically, once it completes the trade, you'll see it here. So I'll just pop to an earlier class. This was section 101 earlier today. Earlier today in section 101, I bought Raytheon, another defense stock. It's a safety stock. And basically, right now, I'm down, actually, I'm up $44 on the day. Okay? So I've actually made $44. It's just real-time ticker, right? But nonetheless, once you buy it to sell it, you see the circle red X? It's called closing a position. Click on the circle red X. That's how you sell the stock, closing out your position, right? Now, rules. Keep it simple, but basically, you can only do equities. That's the most important rule. I've disabled everything else. No bonds, no fixed income, no commodities, no cryptocurrencies, all that stuff disabled. Okay, basically just stock, and by no options. Right. So essentially, cost basis, next tick, 50 characters on the write-up. I've disabled auto closing, which means you can't put in limit orders. You got to sell it if you want, only if you can sell it. Investment levels, put 10,000 is the minimum you can put into a stock, $1 million portfolio. And you can't put more than 20% of your portfolio into one company when you buy it. So no more than 200,000 to start in one company. Securities, basically what I've done is I've limited you to the major markets around the world. So generally bigger companies. It'll tell you if it won't let you buy it. Okay. Also, you can't buy microcaps. So the stock has to have at least 500 million of market value to buy it or short it. And you can't do penny stocks. So I put a minimum of $3 to buy or short. So if you buy it at 4, it goes to 2, you can sell it, but you can't buy it back again at 2. Okay? Because I had a couple semesters ago a student who was literally just playing bankrupt stocks all semester. Right? And that really wasn't the goal of the simulation. Okay? So $3 minimum trade. Period restrictions, I eliminated instant trading. So basically it's a holding period of 1 business day. Buy it today, sell it tomorrow. Short it today, cover it tomorrow. Okay? Can't buy and sell on the same day, same stock. Okay? And then finally, your commission is 1 cent per share. So you buy 100 shares of Berkshire Hathaway, which is a ton of money. It costs you $1. Okay? So not going to pay a lot in trading commission. It's pretty typical for a hedge fund. Right? And then finally, the rules are available for your teams to see. Questions about this? Yes.
So the first training challenge is due after spring break. So is there any way that you can put them in order during that time?
Nope. So your portfolio managers, I know the idea is you should be thinking long term, but so you should be thinking at least a week. But it's a risk we all take. And there's no way to access the training challenge outside the lab. So you can access BMC through the terminal outside the lab. You can't access the actual terminal outside the lab. So the only way to trade is at a lab or a terminal in the school. So downstairs, or if you have Sembit fund access, etc. Yes?
So we could potentially just sell everything before spring break for 3 months.
Then you'd be disqualified because you would have to be 70% in equities.
Until the day.
Yes. I'm not going to make this easy. And we're all faced with the same limitations. Yes? ETFs are okay. Not options, but the ETFs are. So you want to buy a triple levered ETF, that's up to you. Okay, as long as it lets you buy it. So if like a BlackRock, an iShares, something like that, those are available. If they're available to trade, you can trade. Other questions? All right. So back to this. EIC. Homework 2. EIC. E, economy. I, industry. C, company. This was the webinar on Monday. So, 2 questions for economy. Who watched the webinar? What are the 2 questions we're going to address for the economy? Come on, guys. I was doing this from my hospital room. Somebody had to watch the webinar. You skipped the class. 2 questions for the economy. What were they?
How's the economy doing?
Okay. So what screens can we look at? ECFC, ECSU, other things. So that's something we can look at. I'm not going to directly answer that in class today because we're all answering that question for the homework assignment. But I already alluded to this. One of the things is think about the impact on global trade that the coronavirus is having and the problems that China is having. Okay? They're potentially spilling over to the rest of the world. That could be affecting people's view of the economic conditions. Matter of fact, another thing that could be outside of this is you watched the State of the Union last night. There's a campaign commercial for Trump. And the only thing that I got out of this is he's going to do everything in his power to get reelected, which means there's no way in hell he wants to see a recession happen in the United States in 2020. So on the one hand, you got some negative forces. On the other hand, you got Trump, who's going to encourage us to spend money like drunken sailors on shore leave, not worried about deficits anytime soon. So I don't know what's going to actually play out, but that's the point. You got to think about what's going to happen to the direction of the economy, particularly the U.S. and global economy, that will affect, in this case, the airline industry, if we're doing Delta Airlines or United Airlines, over the next 12 to 18 months. Okay? That's the first half of the E question that you have to write up. The second half of the E question is a little bit more quantitative. What's the second part of the question? Yep. Good.
How's the company tied to the
And then how are we going to do that?
I guess like using
What are we going to use to define the company's tied to the economy? Beta is our proxy. So let's do United as a class instead of Delta. So UAL, US equity. RV. Then you go to the market screen. Then you go to beta. Which beta do we use? That beta? Who's tapping? I thought that was a signal. Which beta do we use? Raw. We're using raw in this class. Okay? Now, we have a market cap weighted average. This is a privilege. Bloomberg is the only tool in the world that gives you real-time market averages to everything. There's nobody else that has this tool. You got it. Take advantage of this. So it's a market cap weighted average, but it's an industry average. It's very powerful. So what can we say about the economic sensitivity, given that raw beta, about the airline industry and about United in particular? How do we answer the question about economic sensitivity with that data? What do we say? Is the airline industry sensitive to the economy? What number tells us, and how would you answer that question?
It's like slightly more sensitive because it's 1.14, which is greater than 1 beta.
Okay. By the way, his answer is a terrific answer because not only did he answer the question, but he also used the words 1.14 in his statement. So he basically said that the airline industry is more sensitive because its beta is 1.14, so it's 14% more sensitive than the average company. Right? If he had just said the airline industry is more sensitive than the average company because it has a higher beta, he would be correct and he'd get a 0 on his assignment. So just as a reminder, in this class, words do not equal grade. I don't care if you write 10,000 words. I'll give you a 0 if they're wrong or if there is no data to support it. Okay? There is no partial credit for just typing more words in this class. You have to be right. Okay? That is a standard that I have. Right? It will help you, not only in this class, helps us grade you, but it'll help you in the real world. Right? I cannot tell you, and I know you hate this when people lecture you, but for finance people, you will set yourself apart when you start using numbers in what you say. It makes you so much more credible than everybody else. And when you're doing presentations, and you get a slide like this, and somebody's talking about this, they don't know what the hell you're looking at. You could be looking at the wrong number and making the right statement. If you use data to support it, it's much easier to follow, and I know you're right. I'm just telling you, it will help you so much more in your careers than everybody else. They'll look like bumbling idiots compared to you when they start using general comments. So, back to this. That doesn't even matter. What matters if you want to grade in this class, you're going to use numbers. And the TAs painfully learned that lesson. That's why they're TAs. And they're going to apply that to you because they painfully learned that lesson and not going to let you slack. So, got to use numbers with your words. This industry, 14% more sensitive. What can we say about United? If United were the company we're analyzing. Is United sensitive?
Less sensitive.
Less sensitive?
It's less sensitive than the overall industry by 0.08.
Okay, the key word is use that by 0.08 at the end. I was waiting to hammer him on that. But because of the 1.04 versus 1.06 versus 1.14. So they're a little bit less sensitive, but still sensitive. Now, two things matter here. When we eventually get to the valuations, and we start forecasting cash flows, this is something going to matter because it's going to matter in how we think about cash flows, we think about the economy, because right now, their valuations of these airline stocks is going to be sensitive to changes in the economy, probably more so than the average company. Now, what this data says is United a little less so than the other airlines. That's how we would answer the question for homework 2. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you a personal opinion, which I think I'm right, but I'll let you know it's a personal opinion, which in the real world, I think you'd be wrong answering the question that way. If this were your group project at the end of the semester, I would probably disagree with you, even with this data. All right, and here's why. And this is why we get into EIC. Because the past doesn't always repeat itself. And this is the problem that quants fall down on. And this is where portfolio managers F up. Because what they're going to do is they're going to say all 7 airlines just shut down routes to China. United less sensitive to the other airlines. Look at the data. The algorithm is going to say buy a little bit less or sell a little bit less to United because United's going to be a little less sensitive to what's happening to the coronavirus. Right? Why would I personally disagree with that? Why do you think I personally disagree with this? And I'll tell you, full disclaimer, I work with United Airlines. Not for them, but as a consultant. So I know, and I fly a lot at United Global Services. But what's the, why can I say specifically that I think they're wrong? Anybody with business sense that did any investigation would find out they're wrong.
Is it because they have like more international flights?
More international flights too.
China.
Exactly. United's most profitable routes all go to Asia, specifically to China. They have I think it's a 787, 50 business class seats a day reserved for Apple. Every day. Just Apple. It's like an Apple plane. Going back and forth. Between now and the next 30 days, they're not flying to China. Apple's banned all travel back and forth to China. United's not flying to China, as are none of the other airlines, much less the Asian flights. So I'm just telling you, their San Francisco hub is the hub to China. And that's where all of their growth has been. And so what I'm telling you is United is going to be disproportionately hurt by the other airlines because it's going to hurt them more than all the other airlines. And I'm telling you, this is what I mean by beta can throw you wrong. Because yes, if we think about general economic information, yeah, they're probably a little less sensitive because historically the Asian market has buoyed them when everybody else is in recession. But the specific knowledge says, no, Asia's the problem. And China's going to really hurt United in the short term. And so actually the beta is going to mislead you. And so that's what I mean by, this is what separates good analysts from bad analysts. Because you quants that love to plug and chug to do your mathematical models just assume the math repeats itself, and it doesn't always. Okay? And this is where knowledge of the company will start to matter. Okay? I could be wrong, and maybe the data will play out this way. I don't think I'm going to be wrong. I think that would be something that I'd be much more suspicious about. Because United is probably going to get harder than most. So back to this. I wouldn't expect this for homework 2. Okay? And if you gave the first answer, which is the airline industry is more sensitive, United less sensitive, that's fine. But eventually, if this is the company I'm analyzing, I would expect more digging. Okay? That's the E part of your assignment. Questions? Okay. I hope I'm not repeating myself, but I told this in the last class. Did I talk about correlation coefficients here? Did we talk about correlation? What's a correlation coefficient? You guys are finance majors. It's a correlation coefficient.
How correlated your stocks are?
So it goes between what and what?
Negative 1 and 1.
If you want a diversified portfolio, what do you want? You want what?
0.
Actually, no. You want negative. You want negative correlations to have a diversified portfolio. If something goes up, you want something else to go down. Balance it out. Okay, that's the idea of diversification. You want things that are unrelated. Okay? So, you guys are too young, but 10 years ago in the financial crisis, one of the reasons why the financial crisis got so bad, and you can't make this stuff up, is the quants basically believed that correlation coefficients were sacred. So they built these mathematical models that assumed that correlation would play out in recessions. Okay? And they did until they didn't. So what they did is they built all these safeties to their portfolios. And they basically had negative correlations or low correlation portfolios to diversify. Between 2008 2009, at one point in time, everything went to 80-90% correlation no matter what it was. Things that were negative correlated became 90% correlated. Everything went down. And everybody said, this can't happen. And it did. And that's why math got screwed. Because this is the problem with quantitative mathematics. This is the problem that we have, is we assume the past predicts the future. And the past predicts the future until it doesn't. So even when you're analyzing this, and don't get me wrong, a lot of times it's insightful to use the past. I'm not saying we're ignoring the past. I'm not saying that sometimes it doesn't help us understand the future, but be wary, because every now and then the past does not repeat itself. And that's where danger lies ahead, and that's where you are still better than a computer, right? So, second, industry. Five forces. Is this, and oh, by the way, screenshot. Gotta take a screenshot, save, file, submit. Gotta support your results with data, screenshots so that you actually have the data. Individual screenshots, can't share them. All right, is this an attractive industry? How do we decide? What is an attractive industry?
Positive spread.
So we should have a custom template called spread, already saved. Is this an attractive industry?
Yes.
Why do we know it's an attractive industry? I'm sorry? Go ahead.
Your ROIC is greater than the
She had the absolute right statement. Sorry, you're still getting a 0 on your assignment. Sorry, I'm going to be harsh about this because I want to help you. Hold on.
ROIC is 11.80% and the WACC is 6.87%. So because the ROIC is greater than the WACC, there's a positive spread.
Like music to my ears. That's exactly the right answer. That's the way we should be answering it. You're both right. It's just I knew she knew the right answer and I knew she was looking at the right data. That's the way you need to answer your question. Okay? So that positive spread. Right? Now, second question. Does United demonstrate competitive advantage? And again, I answered this in the webinar, so we should kind of know the answer to this one too. How do we measure competitive advantage? I'm sorry?
And then you would compare it to the average ROIC?
Not the average ROIC. Yeah,
Average spread.
the average spread. So it's performance, relative performance to peers. So again, I'm going to go close to a line. So I'm going to warn you about this. You don't go reporting me to Victor Mullins. Right? So what is Smith ranked in the business school ranking in the world? Are we like 29th in the world or something like that for undergraduate business schools or something? Like we're pretty darn good if you think about it. I mean, you're top 2% of the world. It means if you're in this class, you got to be pretty darn smart. Okay? But by definition, half of you are below average. The people in this class. Now, I'm not going to point to the below average students because then you're going to get pissed off. All right? Because nobody wants to be called below average. But by definition, statistically, half of you are. Right? And that's the point of how we're going to start thinking about competitive advantage. Is that in the real world, everybody thinks they're good at something. And at some point, to be a big company, you had to be somewhat good at it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have that size. But are you good because at this point, you're in a good place? Or are you good because you're actually better than everybody else? That's how we're going to start measuring competitive advantage. Competitive advantage says the airlines are actually doing reasonably well. Across this list, they're all doing pretty well. So there's a performance for being an airline. So a good airline is not just making average performance. A good airline is doing better than all the other airlines. That's competitive advantage. So relative performance to peers is the definition we're going to apply financially to competitive advantage. So given that definition, does United have competitive advantage? I've had drugs and IVs shoved up my arm and surgery, so I'm too dumb right now to do math. But what's the spread of this industry? Yeah.
The spread in the industry is 5.01%.
And what's United's spread?
United spread is 5.25%.
So does that demonstrate competitive advantage?
Yes.
Slight. The answer technically yes, but slight competitive advantage. I mean, I would round off and say they're pretty close to the industry, but slightly better. And that's the way you need to answer the question. United's actually demonstrated competitive advantage. because they're slightly better than the industry average. Okay? What about American? American competitive advantage, yay or nay? No, they're not demonstrating competitive advantage. Is American creating value? Yes, it's actually very possible to create value and not have competitive advantage. They're in a good industry, they're just not doing better than their peers. What about Delta? Delta's doing really well. Okay. What about, who's the other one? Southwest. Southwest of this list? Doing pretty well. So that's the point. Several companies can have competitive advantage. It's okay. More than one can have competitive advantage, given our definition. Everybody with me? All right. That's the easy part. Screenshot number 2, take screenshot, submit. These are the 2 screenshots you have to submit for your assignment. These are the easy part of the write-up. This is the plug and chug. Now for the hard part. You gotta put your thinking caps on. You gotta tell me why. Why is this spread 5 point whatever percent, 500 basis points? That has to be explained by this. We're gonna use the 5 forces, and you gotta talk about all 5 of them to explain the spread. And more importantly, what's the spread today, what are the 5 forces today, and what the spread's gonna look like in 5 years. And rather than directly forecast the spread, we're going to forecast the changes of the 5 forces. Because the forces don't change, the spread's going to be about the same. If the forces change, then the spread could go up or down. So we're going to predict the spread by predicting the change in the forces. That's the approach that we're going to use. Make sense? All right, so I know you don't know a lot about companies, otherwise you wouldn't be undergrads. So a couple of sources of information as you learn in your Bloomberg terminals. Number 1, BI, Bloomberg Intelligence. This is where they aggregate all the information by industry. You can choose your industry, you can choose airlines, learn all about their industry information. So just go to industry, or you can just search here, airlines. And there's a whole dashboard here of industry research. Got market share, cost analysis, macro trends, traffic trends, industry contribution, industry analysis, blah, blah, blah. It's all right there. Okay. You can also go to something called BICO, B-I-C-O, which is top one. Bloomberg has hired sell-side analysts that basically aggregate and curate analyst research and summarize it. So this is what the sell-side analysts are saying about the industry. They're doing the same analysis we are in the real world. Here's a summary for the company you're looking at. Third, if you want to do more detailed research, BRC, these are the analyst reports. There's the JP Morgan analyst report, 29 pages on the U.S. airline industry. They just wrote it. Right? You have access to it. Now, this one, we don't have access to all the analyst reports because you have to pay more than the $25,000 to get more. And as part of our free license, they didn't give us that. So we have some, but you won't get others. So for example, you're not going to see Goldman Sachs. You're not going to see others. But you'll see some of the banks on here. And again, there's nothing wrong with using any of this in this class. So again, you can write and footnote and bibliography and use the research here. Don't plagiarize. So don't go to the JP Morgan analyst report on the airline industry and just plagiarize it, cut and paste, and not cite it, because then you'll be part of the Honor Council with no defense and no excuse, right? But basically, if you bibliography it or footnote it, then you're good, okay? And somebody asked me about the format. Like, I don't care that it's like a formal, I don't even know what the format for footnotes is anymore, to be honest with you. But as long as you cite it, I'm okay. I just want you to recognize that, hey, I use the JP Morgan airline report. That's good enough for me, as opposed to the formal footnote associated with that. Just to show that you're not using somebody else's research as your own. That's more important. So it's not the formal part of it, but I do want the formal actual footnoting or footnoting of the bibliography to say that I didn't plagiarize. Because every assignment that you turn in, it's going through, turn it in. And if it finds plagiarism pretty good, as a matter of fact, it has a library of all past submissions of people in this class that's also checking against. So be careful. In any event, other source you could look at, by the way, is IBIS World. If you come here to, so here quickly, it is VBIC, open new tab, industry, for IBIS World, you could type in, try to do this online, it took forever. Either type in the company name or the industry, it'll tell you the report. And it basically gives you a 5 forces analysis. Okay, so that's the other way you can get the data. But however you do it, it's taking too long. Let's come back to this. You got to talk about in the context of the 5 forces. So let's practice really quick. What about these 5 forces explains the positive spread of the airline industry? Which forces? What do you think? Why does this industry have 500 basis points of positive spread? Which of those forces help explain that? Buyer power, supplier power, barriers to entry and exit, substitutes, rivalry, what is it? Yep.
Barriers to entry, cost of entry is extremely high.
Yeah, I'm not going to start up an airline anytime soon very easily. So that generally helps the airline industry. What else? Yeah.
Substitutes.
What about it?
Like if you need to get somewhere far, there's really no other option except to plane.
Define far.
Fastest way.
Define far. Yeah, like international travel, you're not going on a steamship anymore. Okay? Maybe you are. I don't know. But, or at least long distance. You're probably not taking a train to LA or driving. So exactly. Long distance travel. Airlines don't have a lot of viable substitutes. Although, what could be one? Yep.
Hyperloop.
Not today. Well, I don't have to physically be somewhere anymore, do I?
Like video conferencing.
Like video conferencing. That, now, may not be hurting the industry now, but that's something to keep an eye on. That could be hurting them a little bit because some people are saying, hey, do I need to spend $1,000 to travel somewhere, or can we just do a webinar? Okay? So again, that to some degree could be hurting the airlines, but doesn't seem to be hurting them too much. Substitutes don't seem to be hurting them too much, help the airlines. What else? What else about these forces? Yeah.
Maybe like rivalry, like there's a lot of competition and it's like pretty low margin in terms of, especially the way it's heading. A lot of it's like budget airlines.
You think so? Have you flown anywhere recently?
Yeah, like last week.
Do you think it's cheap?
I think it was, yeah. But it was, like I said, it was a budget airline.
But I'm saying, but do you think there's a lot of competition?
I mean, especially with all the different external websites like Expedia, like Skiplagged, all that stuff. Like,
I know there's a lot of websites, but how many actual flights do you get to choose from? Airlines do you get to choose from? Like, I'm just asking. And in all seriousness, there are 4 airlines that represent 80% of air travel in the United States. So I can tell you that there's a few budget carriers, but if you're traveling, you're probably traveling on one of the 4. And so, for example, if you're flying out of Atlanta, I can tell you that most likely, 87% of the time, you're on Delta. If you're in San Francisco, you're on United. If you're BWI, you're on Southwest. Okay? If you're out of Philly, you're flying American. Okay? So they create these fortress hubs. And essentially, they've eliminated competition. There used to be 10 major airlines, now there's 4. Okay? And they generally don't compete with each other. And they have actually restrained capacity so that they're not buying more planes. The planes used to be 80% full. Now they're 95% full. And they want the flights full. Why? Because they're raising fares, they're not adding seats. And by the way, they're cramming more people into the planes rather than buying more planes. So when you think about competition, yeah, there's a lot of choice on the air. You think there's choice? But by the way, there's not as much choice as you want because Expedia owns 22 travel websites. They're all Expedia, just rebranded, just so you know. So when you go to like cheaptickets.com and booking.com and whatever it's called, all the other ones, it's all the same database, just a different interface. But that being said, because seriously, Expedia and Priceline are 90% of all tickets through the third-party bookings. And they just created all these fictitious brands, so you actually think you have choice there too. You don't have as much choice as you think you do. And that was intentional by the airlines, and that was the result. By the way, think about fees. Outside of Southwest, everybody charges fees. In fact, when JetBlue raised fees last week, everybody else matched them. Why would I want to cut fees? Let's just raise. Everybody's going to be paying fees. That's not power for us. That shows the power that the industry actually has. So we actually probably don't have a lot of power. That's helping them. What else is helping them? Yeah.
Possibly suppliers because of going price things.
Theoretically, that should hurt them. There's only 2 people I can buy planes from. But it doesn't seem to be hurting them enough to hurt the profitability. Okay? What else?
Suppliers with like oil costs.
That could also be hurting them. But they've been able to pass along some of the oil costs, but that's the point. When oil prices are high, airlines do poorly. When oil prices are low, airlines do well. So the power of suppliers is high, but right now, low oil prices benefiting suppliers. Saudi Arabia had to cut oil output by a million barrels a day because of the coronavirus, because people aren't traveling as much. So that's actually helping the airlines right now as prices are low. A lot less rival than there used to be, but the point is, this is stuff that you got to research, this is stuff that you got to explain. But here's the more important part of the question. How's this going to change in 5 years? What about those forces are actually going to change in 5 years? This is harder for me to disagree with you because we're now predicting the future. But you got to give me some data to support your made up stuff. Okay? So it has to be somewhat fact-based or at least realistic-based. So what could change in the next 5 years about these forces? If anything. Did you have something?
I was just gonna like mention like digital active, like the speed travel that they're increasing, so have an impact on how fast travel can happen.
So you think that there could be more substitutes? Okay. What else? Yeah.
As you mentioned previously, like people don't need to meet face to face.
Technology could disrupt the airline travel, and particularly business travel, which is very lucrative for the airlines. That could affect, and you want to tie in terms of a force, substitutes. Make them stronger, more attractive. What else? Yep.
Well, a lot of people are trying to become a lot more sustainable, so you guys stop doing airline travel.
So the sustainability movement might change which force?
The buyers.
Exactly. And if people believe in this, low carbon footprint, no carbon travel stuff, if it actually starts taking off, that could be bad for the airlines. So that could actually, in a way, empower some of the buyers. So that's something they need to keep their eye on. Right? What else? I'll give you another potential one, regulation. At some point, they've been cramming more and more seats into a plane. What happens when the regulator starts saying, you're going to kill people? Like there's just, too packed in, too crammed in, so we're not going to let you do it anymore. You got to give people more space. Well, then it's harder for the airlines to have as much power over us as well. You might actually start having to have less rivalry because they have to put more planes out there, more supply. Okay, so I don't know how realistic any of these could be. That's what you have to argue for me, and you have to make a call. Do you think that these changes will affect the spread? Because what you're trying to get to is what's the spread going to look like in 5 years? Is it about the same? Is Is it going to be better? Is it going to be worse? That's going to be the assignment for the company that you do. And then finally, C, competitive advantage. Okay? Does United have competitive advantage? We said slight for the reasons that we did earlier. So, why? And will that change in 5 years? So will they have a slightly better spread in the industry in 5 years? Will be a lot better? Will be a lot worse? About the same? Anybody have an opinion on that? What do you think about United? I'll tell you that they're ranked as the worst airline for customer service in the United States. Last year, when they killed the bunny and they dragged the guy out of the plane, it really destroyed their reputation. And they still have not recovered from that. Okay? And so basically, they're the lowest ranked customer satisfaction airline in the United States. Right? They're competing with the Spirit Airers and the others for just, you hate to fly them, but you do anyways. Now, they're trying to fix that. And they're trying to change that reputation. By the way, who's number one? Actually, Delta. Delta and Southwest are number 1 and 2. Okay? Delta for business travelers, Southwest for leisure travelers. And United would like to improve. But here's the point. One of the reasons why United probably doesn't have a better spread is because there is some spillover to the fact that people don't trust that airline. And you'll fly them because you need to, but I don't think they're everybody's favorite airline. Right? But if they work and they become your favorite airline, which is something they're actually trying to do, well, that could change their spread. It could actually become more attractive, and then they might actually start getting much more of a positive spread over time. So the question is, they're saying that publicly. Their goal is to become number 1 in customer satisfaction of U.S. airlines long term, bar none. That is their stated public goal to the analysts, and the new CEO is taking over. That is his mission. That is what he said he wants to do. Okay? So here's the question. Do you believe they're going to do that in 5 years? Because that's going to be the question about whether or not the spread's going to probably change or not, and how other airlines reflect to that. So that's the point. You're going to have to make a call on the companies to see what you believe their spread's going to be or not, whether it's going to change. That's the practice. That's the assignment you got to do for Monday. Minimum 500 words. Again, when you submit it, you're going to turn in a minimum 500-word paper. The first thing the TAs are going to do is they're going to open that document and check the word count. If they see 499 words or less, they're not going to grade anything. They're just going to give you a 0 and you don't get a do-over. Okay? So make sure on every paper you submit, unless said otherwise, there's a minimum word count. Check the word count. Also, 2 screenshots. Screenshots with 500 words equals 0 on assignment. So if you give me 500 words, but you forget the screenshots, you still get a 0 on the assignment. Because the grading standard in this class is words and data together. If you have words and no data, you don't get credit. If you have correct data but no words, you don't get credit. You need correct words and correct data to get credit on an assignment. So, 2 screenshots, the right screenshots, the Word document, and that's what needs to be submitted. EIC. The company will be given in about an hour and 20 minutes. It will be available at your 4:30 today, because I don't want the next section doing it on class. Do Monday, 10 a.m. Questions about that assignment? Yes?
So the company's not the same one from Homework 1?
It will be a different company. Okay. Individual assignment, not a group assignment. Do your own screenshots, write your own write-up, do your own analysis. That's the only way you're going to learn this stuff. You got to practice it yourself, using the tool yourself. Okay? Now, just a word to the wise. I do have a medical thing on Monday, so I will not be here on Monday physically. It will be a video webinar. Take advantage of the time to do your Bloomberg certification. Take advantage of the time the lab will be open to start meeting about your Bloomberg trading challenge, because you can start trading, start doing your research on what stocks you want to buy, because by the end of next week, you have to be 700,000 into something in terms of portfolio by the end of next week. We plan on having our next live lecture next Wednesday, 1 week from today, and then we'll be talking about homework 3. Okay, so that's what's coming up very soon. Right? Questions about anything else? All right, so last but not least, I do need whoever's going to be your team leader. So you need to be on a team. So drag yourself to teams, meet the teams before you leave. If you're not on a team, I'm happy to put you on one, but you can self-select. Again, no less than 5, no more than 7. You have to be on the section you register for, so this is 301. And if you have your team leader, I can register for the Bloomberg Trading Challenge. If not, send me an email, and I'll register your team leader by Monday, because you guys want to start trading by Monday. And as soon as you have the million, you're welcome to start trading. Okay? See everybody next week.
Hi. Sorry.